Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about life and death in astrology. Now, as far as life goes in astrology, I think somebody that has a Capricorn sun, moon, or ascendant can have an extended life and could be very auspicious for longevity. Saturn governs over rules Capricorn. Saturn is about age and longevity. So another thing too for living above average age could be, and a good indicator for longevity could be Jupiter conjunct the ascendant or sun, because the sun is about life and the ascendant plays a strong proponent in our vitality. And Jupiter, of course, is the benign, benevolent planet, can expand. But keep in mind, too, that Jupiter, like say, conjunct the ascendant, could also give a propensity to gain weight. And when you're heavier, I believe, of course, that could play a role in living, to an average life, or, might factor in actually to a below average in terms of years lived. Jupiter sextile or trine the natal ascendant, I think, could be good, or Jupiter sextile or trine one's natal sun, because the sun is about life and you have Jupiter is a fortuitous planet, benign and benevolent, and also the Jupiter sextile or trine the ascendant, because the ascendant can be connected with one's physical body and one's vitality. So anyway, another thing that could be a good indicator for longevity could be Pluto making a sextile or trine to the ascendant or sun, because of course the sun is about life, as I stated before. Pluto is about death, and you have a positive aspect between the two. I think it would make sense to believe that that could be a good aspect. So anyway, for that. Now Capricorn on the 8th house cusp also can be fortuitous for a longer life. Saturn in the 8th can be positive. Saturn and Capricorn are about the old man of the zodiac, and the 8th house is associated with death. Now, I also think Jupiter in the 8th, or even Sagittarius on the 8th house cusp, could be fortuitous for longevity and extended living as well. Now, Jupiter in the 4th house could be beneficial as well, I believe, because the 4th house does govern the end of life. Now, Jupiter, of course, is paradoxical. It could sometimes indicate that just there might be issues that are, that might mean that there's issues, there's expansion at the end of life, there's might be just a lot of things going on, a lot of activity at the end of life, but this could be still a very positive placement for one's end of life, and that doesn't exclude, of course, living beyond an above average lifespan. So anyway, now the thing about it too is another thing I think could actually be maybe positive for longevity is, Saturn conjunct the ascendant. I understand what Saturn limits and restricts, but Saturn can also be about longevity. Saturn conjunct the ascendant can indicate somebody might have a little bit diminished vitality, or maybe debilitated or weaker constitution, but that doesn't mean the person can't live to an above average age. So anyway, well, another thing too is when I look at this, you also have to factor in your environment as well. If you're in an environment that's very high, got a strong crime rate, if there's a lot of murders, that's got to be factored in. A lot of nefarious activity, which doesn't exclude murdering, of course, and genetics as well. If you have, of course, like say, if your genetics indicate that people that have lived before you in your family tree, a lot of them have lived to an above average age, that factors in as well, even if your chart might have any or many or any indicators of stronger longevity. And also, let's say in your family tree, if your family has a history of maybe living to average age or below average age, and even if you have some indicators that might be, indicate, above average life. You've got to factor that into the equation, of course, as well. So anyway, now, well, we'll talk about death in this. I know, some people think that this is morbid and morose. They don't really like it, but the way I perceive death, it is a proponent of life. I do believe it needs to be discussed. So for those of you that aren't interested in this part of it, then I guess you would pause or hit stop on the video at this point. So I mean, anyway, well, the thing about it is, if someone has, say, Pluto conjunct their ascendant, of course, I think this could be an indicator. I mean, especially in transit Pluto. I mean, transit Pluto conjunct the ascendant. I mean, many times this could just indicate a strong transformation or plastic surgery, personal metamorphosis in one's outlook. But when you have a transit Pluto to the ascendant, this could be an indicator of death. Pluto conjunct the ascendant in natal chart. Well, I don't know necessarily it means that one could die early, but I think what it is when Pluto conjuncts the ascendant, I think that's more of an obsession or fixation on the physical body, more than anything. And I think that the person might have a fascination with the subject of death, but if you have it just in your natal chart, I just don't know. I don't necessarily see that as something where that means you're going to die, at an early age or anything. So anyway, the thing about another thing to talk about too is that Pluto also conjunct the ascendant in a progressed chart. That could be a little bit greater propensity for death. When Carl Sagan passed away, his Pluto in his progressed chart was conjunct his ascendant. And also transit Pluto conjunct the natal sun can do this as well, because as you know, as I stated before, the sun is about life, Pluto is about death. When Donna Summer and David Bowie passed away, transit Pluto conjoined, I believe transit Pluto conjoined their natal suns in both cases. Now, another thing is to talk about. Now, this is also, as far as transits go, I mean, let's say if you have, let's say, transits to the 8th house. Now, let's say if you have Uranus transit the 8th house, or in a progressed chart, could indicate perhaps an unanticipated, really spontaneous or an unusual death. It could be from some kind of electrocution in some cases, some bizarre accident. Mars transiting the 8th could indicate a volatile death. Mars in the 8th house in the natal chart could indicate that as well. Now, Jupiter in the 4th, I mean, well, Jupiter anyway, I talked about that before, that could be an indicator for an auspicious period for the latter part of one's life, and that doesn't exclude living to above average age. And let me go back to the Pluto conjunct the ascendant one more time, natal chart, to elaborate and expound on that a little more. That's why I waited till the end. That one's a little bit hard to explain. Well, because I mean, the thing about that is when you have Pluto conjunct the ascendant natally, the reason I don't see that as an indicator of one dying really is because it's not by transit. Or in a progressed transit is something that that occurs at a certain point in time in a transit, and the Pluto in your natal chart is there permanently conjunct the ascendant. So I don't know if you could really determine something as far as the longevity by a spot, as far as that spot conjunct your in terms of being by the first house cusp. I mean, that's basically what I'm saying. I think it's more of an indicator when it's by a transit or it's by or in a progression in a chart. And remember, people, that this is not about these transits alone. Are generally, I don't think, are isolated, are not necessarily going to be indicators. Like, a lot of times you have to have like other things to accommodate it or accompany it, so to speak, such as progressions in the 8th house in a progressed chart, maybe more transits to the 8th. These transits to the 8th making it a lot of times negative, adverse aspects to other planets and points in your natal chart. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for life and death and astrology. And stay tuned next time, where I'm going to be talking about astrology and vitality and energy. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.